What I'd like to do is record two macros. Prior to doing this, I'm just going to insert a sheet. So I'll press the Insert New Sheet button just down here. Having inserted a new sheet, I'll double click and I'll name it Macros. Now the macro I'm about to make, I want to do what they call turning on the relative referencing. On the Developers tab, there's a button called Use Relative References, and I want this macro to use relative references. That is, if I record clicking on A1 and then going to A2 and then going to A3, I don't want it to record those specific cell addresses. I actually want it to relatively record going down one and going down one, and not going to A2 and going to A3. So I'll turn on the Use Relative References button. Now when you click it, it doesn't really look like it's turned on, but it is if it has a different background color, and in my case the different background color is a gray. Now I'd like to record a macro. You can use the Record Macro button here on the Developers tab, but I do want to draw attention to the fact that on your status bar, which is the bar that runs underneath the sheet names, you do have a button here. This button is also to record macros and stop recording macros. Now if you don't have this button to the right of your numlock, you may have to right click the status bar underneath the sheet names and turn on macro recording. If I untick this option, that button disappears, and if I re-tick the option, it reappears. So this is another way to record a macro. I'll click this button and this will bring up this dialog box. I want to give this macro the name Address. Now I also want to assign a shortcut key to this macro. Notice how Control is already mentioned and can't be turned off. If you assign a shortcut key to a macro, it has to include the Control key in the key combination. I would highly advise you not to use Control A to Z, because most of those shortcut keys have been used by Microsoft and have been assigned to functions already. And if you use one of the Control A to Z key combinations, you will lose the default. For example, Control B is bold, and if I assign Control B to a macro, I'll no longer be able to use Control B for bold. So I actually highly recommend clicking on this little field and pressing Shift and whatever other letter. So I'm going to go Shift A for address. By me pressing Shift A, I'm assigning Control Shift A to the address macro. I don't want to assign Control A because I use Control A to select all, so I've gone with Control Shift A. Also, when it comes to storing the macro, you can store the macro in this workbook, which means it will only be able to be run if this workbook's open. If I store it in a new workbook, whatever I then save that new workbook as will also need to be opened if I want to be able to run the macro. And if I save it in the personal macro workbook, that's a workbook that's hidden in the background, and that means it's always open whenever you start Excel, and therefore the macro will always run because that file will always be open. I'm going to choose this workbook. The description is your opportunity to claim fame, and so typically we usually say who we are, when we made it in terms of a date and time, what the macro is designed to do, and any limitations to the macro would also be typed here, but I'll just stick with that for now. So I'm going to click OK. Now without moving anywhere, so don't move to a different cell or you'll record doing that. Just where you are right now, type in, example, your name or your company's name, press the down arrow and type your address. Best fit the column if necessary, and sit where you want to be sitting when the macro finishes running. You could also make something bold. Let's just select this and go Control B, widen the column if necessary, and then sit where you want to stop recording. To stop recording, you could either hit the Stop Recording option on the Developers tab, or you could hit the Stop Recording button now down here on your status bar. So I'll click to stop recording. To run the macro, I'll simply click, say, in C3, and I'll press Ctrl-Shift-A, which is the shortcut key we applied to the macro. When I press Ctrl-Shift-A, it automatically ran the macro and inserted my address. I'd like to record another macro, so I'll just sit somewhere, maybe in B10, and I'll record macro. I'm going to call this macro today, and I'm going to assign the shortcut key Ctrl-Shift D for date. I won't bother about a description, I think we've got the idea there, and we will store the macro in this workbook, so I'm going to click OK. I'm now going to record inserting a function, equals NO, and I'll double click now, and I'll press enter. So there's the date and time. Now I'd like to format, so I'll go right click, and I'll go Format Cells, and I'll choose a date and time format, or I'll type my own. In fact, I might type my own. I'll type DDD, 4 Ds, another D, 4 Ms, comma, 3 Ys, space, 2 H's, colon, and 2 M's, and maybe AM/PM. Basically, you can format the date and time to any way that you want, and just to be different, I've gone with this format, and I'll click OK. And now I'll stop recording. To test my macro, I'll click and say D10, and I'll press Ctrl-Shift-D. So I've made 2 macros. One inserts an address, and one inserts a date, and formats it accordingly.